Chapter 4174. Wang Yu was startled and looked at her. When he saw her looking at him with a faint smile, he said, "After we parted yesterday." "Yes, you're really good," Feng Jiu said with a smile. "But I'm curious, how did you guess our identity?" "I have some properties in other cities, and any big news in other cities will be sent to me as soon as possible. So when I met Miss Feng yesterday, I was guessing. Later, when I heard you say your surname was Feng, I was almost sure." He did not hide anything and said it. "It seems that the Wang family is not as declining as it is rumored to be. At least, there are not many people in this city who know I'm here." Feng Jiu smiled, stood up and walked slowly to the fence. Looking at the scenery in the distance, he said, "Since you know our identity and our purpose of coming to Azure Demon City, then, in the next few days, we'll come to your mansion and bother you." Seeing that she was not angry but agreed to visit his mansion, Wang Yu was overjoyed and hurriedly stood up, saying, "It's our honor to have Miss Feng come to our Wang family. However, I don't like trouble, so our identity must not be revealed." Feng Jiu said and turned to look at him. "I know about this. Only my grandfather knows about this. I didn't even tell my father. Come back with me. I will tell my father that an old friend of mine is here to stay for a short while. I won't reveal anything else." He hurriedly said, "Okay." Feng Jiu nodded and said, "Well, I also want to ask your grandfather about the ancient nine-tailed fox spirit." Wang Yu said with a smile, "Then I'll take you around the city today. There are several scenic spots in the city that are worth visiting. You can go and have a look. In the evening, I'll take you back to the mansion." "Okay," she responded. It was good to walk around the city to relax, so that she would not think about Xianyuan Mose and her two children when she was free. So, Wang Yu walked out of the attic and told a servant to go back to the mansion and have someone clean a yard. They could stay there when they went to the Wang family in the evening. On this day, he took Feng Jiu and others to play around the city. In the mansion, the head of the Wang family was surprised when he learned that Wang Yu had someone come back to clean the plum courtyard. When he arrived at the courtyard, he saw that the servants were all busy, and the attendant was still watching the servants clean. He asked, "Jianshu, why did you come back by yourself instead of accompanying your young master?" As he said this, he glanced at the plum courtyard and asked, "Who are you letting to live in this plum courtyard for?" Jianshu was Wang Yu's confidant and servant. And his servant, after hearing the head's words, he said according to Wang Yu's order, "Master." The master met his old friends outside and invited them to stay in the mansion for a few days. Now the master accompanied them to play in the city and will come back to the mansion in the evening. So I came back to clean the plum courtyard to receive the guests. Hearing this, the head of the Wang family thought for a while and said, "Your master usually doesn't let people live in the plum courtyard, but today he uses it to entertain his old friends. I think he values his friends very much." He glanced at the plum courtyard and said, "Since it's your master's order, you should have people clean it carefully. In addition, tell the kitchen to prepare some wine and dishes to entertain your master's friends in the evening, so as not to be rude." Chapter 4175. Knowing that his son was going to bring a guest back, the head of the Wang family didn't care much. He just thought that the guest must have a good relationship with his son. Otherwise, he wouldn't have asked someone to clean the plum garden first. After instructing the servants to prepare so that they wouldn't be disrespectful, he threw the matter to the back of his mind. In the cave residence at the back of the mountain, a middle-aged man came to the residence and reported to the old ancestor of the Wang family, "Master, the eldest young master asked someone to clean the plum garden first and said that he would bring a guest back to stay for a few days. Other things in the mansion are as usual. Today, I heard the head of the family making arrangements. It seems that he is going to celebrate your birthday." Hearing this, the old man was slightly surprised and said, "You mean you are asked someone to clean the plum garden and said that a guest was going to live in?" The middle-aged man was surprised by his focus, but he didn't show it on his face. He just said, "Yes, when I passed by the plum garden, I saw the servants were cleaning and the kitchen was busy. It seems that the eldest young master values this guest very much." When he heard the news, the first thing that came to the old man's mind was whether the guest was the ghost Dr. Fungio. However, he wasn't sure. How could someone like Fungio live in the Wang family? I see. You can leave now, he said and motioned for him to leave. However, just as the middle-aged man was about to leave, he was stopped by the old man. Wait. Master, what else can I do for you? The middle-aged man asked and stopped. You is back. Ask him to see me, the old man said. Yes, the middle-aged man answered and left. In the evening, Wang Yu took Fungio to the gate of the Wang family. He stopped and said to Fungio, "This is my home." Then he asked the servants to open the gate to welcome the guest. It's very grand. Fungio looked at the gate and nodded. It was an old man who opened the gate. When he saw Wang Yu come back, he smiled and saluted. Young master is back. He looked at Fungio, Lung Shuang, and Yi Feifei with some surprise. He was surprised that Wang Yu would come back with 3 women. Originally, he thought that they would be girls from some small family, but seeing the 3's bearing, he didn't dare to be negligent. He hurriedly opened the door and invited them in. Butler, why are you here? Wang Yu asked when she saw him. I heard from Jianshu that young master wanted to bring the guests back home, so I've been waiting here. Young master, ladies, please come in. Hearing this, Wang Yu invited Fungio and the others in and said to the housekeeper, Housekeeper, you wait here for a while. Mr. Du will come later. The butler was slightly startled and hurriedly replied, Yes. He was surprised. There was another guest. Fungio followed him into the prince's mansion. While looking at the scenery of the prince's mansion, he said, Since I've disturbed you, I think I should meet your father. After all, this is etiquette. Entering someone else's house, since they were guests, they had to meet the host. Otherwise it would be rude. Hearing this, Wang Yu paused and said, Then I'll take you to the hall to have a cup of tea first, and then go to the yard to rest. While speaking, she beckoned a servant and said something. Okay. Fungio responded and followed her to the hall. Chapter 4176. Yes, the young master just brought the guest into the mansion and asked me to report that he wants to invite you to the hall. The guard said respectfully, Is the guest a man or a woman? Family head Wang asked. The guard thought for a moment and said, Yes, there are 3 women, but the one in red should be the master of the other 2. I heard that the young master also ordered the housekeeper to wait at the gate, saying that Mr. Du hasn't arrived yet. I see. You can leave now. Family head Wang said thoughtfully, and let the guard leave first. What's wrong? Mrs. Wang came over and asked. You brought the guests back. It seems that he wants us to meet them. Let's go. Let's go and see what kind of guest he brought back. The Wang family head straightened his robe as he spoke. That's right. Hearing that it was a female guest, Mrs. Wang nodded and said, Since it's a female guest, I'll go and have a look. Then she went out with her husband. Wang Yu took Fungio to the hall, and occasionally stopped to introduce the structure and courtyard of the mansion to them. Therefore, when family head Wang and his wife arrived at the hall, they had not arrived yet. This is the front hall. Wang Yu said and saw that her parents were already sitting in the hall. She said to Fungio, My father and mother are in the hall. Let me introduce you. Then she led her into the hall. Father, mother. Wang Yu first bowed to the 2 of them, then smiled and said, Let me introduce you. This is a friend of mine surnamed Feng. Then she introduced Feng Ix's parents to them. Greetings, family head Wang and Mrs. Wang. Fungio bowed to them. Miss Feng, you don't have to be so polite. Please sit down. Wang Yu and his wife quickly said, and invited her to sit down. Looking at the beautiful woman in red with extraordinary temperament, the couple could not help but look at each other and feel slightly surprised. They did not expect that there was such a beautiful woman in the world. Moreover, she knew their son. Although he was their son, they also knew that their son was just a hedonistic son. They usually had some friends, but they had never seen such an outstanding person like the one in front of them. The red-clothed woman's actions were natural and unrestrained, and her every movement revealed a sense of laziness and casualness. She did not have the slightest restraint or timidity of a woman. Instead, she had a noble aura that was formed from the heavens. Even as the family head and madam, they could not put on any airs in front of this woman. They were even a little nervous and restrained, It was as if the person sitting in front of them was not a young woman, but a noble powerhouse. As the woman in red sat down, the two women behind her also stood behind her. The woman in black was dressed in tight clothes and had a cold expression. However, she exuded a cold aura, and her cultivation level was unfathomable. The other woman's cultivation level was not strong, but her temperament was like that of a woman from a noble family. She was definitely not an ordinary rogue cultivator or maid. I hope the two of you don't mind my intrusion, Fengjiu said with a smile, as he looked at the two people at the head of the table. Chapter 4177. Fengjiu smiled, glanced at Leng Shuang, and raised his hand. This is a little gift from me. I hope you will accept it. Leng Shuang came out, took a square gift box from the space, and handed it to them. Wang Yu was slightly surprised and said, It's good that you can come. How can we accept your gift? It's the first time we visit, so we can't come empty-handed. Fengjiu smiled and said carelessly, It's just a little gift. Hearing her words, Mr. and Mrs. Wang looked at each other and said, In that case, we thank you very much, Miss Feng. Then Mrs. Wang motioned the maidservant to come forward and take it. They thought it should be some ordinary gifts, so they didn't take it seriously. They just thought that since it was a little gift from the girl, they should accept it. They couldn't ask her to take it back. Is this the first time Miss Feng comes to Azure Demon City? Family head Wang asked. Yes, it's my first time here. Fengjiu answered and took a sip of tea. Where is Miss Feng from? How did you know you? Mrs. Wang couldn't help asking. Hearing this, Fengjiu smiled. When he was about to speak, Wang Yu stood up and said, Father, Mother, they must be tired after playing outside for a whole day. I'll take them to the plum garden to have a rest. Seeing this, the couple looked at each other and said with a smile, Yes, let's go to have a rest first. Since Miss Feng is here, you should take good care of her. See if there is anything missing in the plum garden. Accompany Miss Feng to play around these 2 days. I know. I'll take them to have a rest first, Wang Yu said and looked at Fengjiu. Fengjiu stood up and smiled at family head Wang and Mrs. Wang, saying, Family head Mrs. Wang, I'll go to have a rest first. Okay. The Wang couple responded and stood up as well. They watched Wang Yu leave with the 3 girls. When they were out of sight, Madame Wang said worriedly, Isn't it inappropriate for you to take care of these 3 girls? We don't have to worry about this. You will arrange everything. Moreover, this Miss Feng seems to have an extraordinary background. Didn't you notice? You only said that her surname was Feng, and didn't even tell us her name. She also didn't allow us to ask in detail. She was very mysterious. Wang family head said thoughtfully. He felt very strange in his heart. It wasn't that he looked down on his son, but how did his son make such an outstanding friend? The head of the Wang family looked outside. Suddenly, as if he remembered something, he turned to look at his wife and said, By the way, isn't it Father's birthday in a few days? I think there hasn't been a happy event in our family for a long time, so I want to hold a big one. I've already asked my subordinates to prepare for it. You keep an eye on it these days, and let them arrange it carefully. I know, but if we hold a big one, too many people will be invited. I'm a little worried that something will happen at that time, Madame Wang said with a little worry between her eyebrows. Are you worried that other families will take the opportunity to make trouble? Wang family head asked. Yes, don't worry about this. On such a day, no one will be so sensible to make trouble, Wang family head said and clasped his hands behind his back. Let's go. Go back to the courtyard. Chapter 4178. Yes, the maidservant answered, and handed over the box in her hand. Mrs. Wang took the box, and went back to the room with her husband. On the other side, Wang Yu took Fengjiu and others to the plum courtyard and said, The plum courtyard is a little far from the front yard. It's a remote place in the mansion, but it's quiet. You can live here. It's divided into inner and outer courtyards. There are more than a dozen rooms. You can choose whichever one you want. I'll tell the servants not to disturb you if no one asks. Wang Yu introduced them to the plum courtyard while taking them inside. He opened the door and said to Fengjiu, This room has the best position. It's the master bedroom. You can live in this room. Okay. Fengjiu answered and looked inside. No one usually lives here, right? Because there are several courtyards in the mansion to entertain guests. I usually don't let people live in the plum courtyard. Wang Yu smiled and said, You've been tired all day today. Have a good rest first. I've asked the maidservants to wait outside in the courtyard. You just need to call them. I'll go first. Have a good rest. With that, he bowed to Fengjiu and turned to leave. After watching him leave, Yi Feifei then said with a smile, Master, this young master you seems to be quite good. He arranged it well. It's really quiet in the courtyard, and the environment is really good. Master, do you want to take a bath? I'll ask someone to prepare the water first. Leng Shuang said and looked at Fengjiu. Well, a hot bath is also good. Ask someone to prepare it. Fengjiu said, and went to the soft couch in the master bedroom to lie down. So Leng Shuang asked someone to prepare the water for the bath. At this time, Du Fan came with the housekeeper. Young Master Du, this is the plum courtyard. You have a good rest. I'll leave first. The housekeeper said and left after bowing. Is the spirit deer carriage settled? Leng Shuang asked. Well, it's in the Wang family. The housekeeper arranged it himself. Don't worry. Du Fan said and looked at the courtyard, showing a smile. It's quite big here. And the environment is really better than the inn. There are more than a dozen rooms in the courtyard, divided into the front yard and the backyard. Master, you live in the master bedroom. Feifei and I live in one next to it. You choose one. Leng Shuang said and went inside. Du Fan rubbed his chin and said, You can come however you want. I'll just stay next to you. As he said this, he went to the door of one of the rooms and pushed it open to take a look. He said, Where? How come we don't know? If you don't know, I don't know either. Why don't we call our son here and ask him? Mrs. Wang said, and put the box on the shelf. We have to ask him. After a while, he'll probably still be in the plum courtyard with Miss Feng and the others. The Wang family head said and looked at her. Seeing that she was putting the box on the shelf, he asked in surprise, Why did you bring the gift they sent to the room? Didn't you put it in the storeroom? I thought the box was not big, so I took it back. Mrs. Wang said. Chapter 4179. Hearing this, Madame Wang picked up the box and walked to the table. It's quite light. I guess it's a small thing. As she spoke, she opened the box and saw only a bottle of medicine inside. She was stunned and looked at her husband. It seems to be medicine? Medicine? Patriarch Wang took off his coat and hung it up. After hearing her words, he walked forward and saw that there was indeed a bottle of medicine in the box. He picked it up and opened it. When the bottle cap was opened, a strong spiritual aura accompanied by the smell of the elixir came to his nose. He was stunned for a moment and quickly poured the elixir into his hand. This is... He widened his eyes in shock and looked at the elixir with an elixir pattern in his palm. His heart was like a storm, fiercely impacting his soul. This is a 7th level elixir of the best quality. Madame Wang saw the 7 elixir patterns and exclaimed in surprise. Such an elixir is priceless outside. She gave it to us just like that? As the mistress of one of the 8 great families, she still had a discerning eye. However, this kind of elixir was something that even their family's storehouse didn't have. How could Miss Feng just casually give it away? She couldn't help but look at her husband, who hadn't recovered yet, and said hesitantly, Could it be that she took it by mistake? Isn't this gift too precious? Patriarch Wang looked at the elixir in his hand and said with a dignified expression, This is not an ordinary 7th level elixir. This is an elixir that can help one's strength to break through. As far as I know, even the alchemists in the Alchemy Guild can't refine this kind of 7th level elixir. As he spoke, he carefully put the elixir back into the bottle and said, Ask someone to call you or here. As he spoke, he turned around and put on the coat that he had just taken off. Okay, Madame Wang said and gave an order to the outside. At this time, Wang Yu was in the cave residence at the back of the mountain, talking to his grandfather about what happened today. Grandfather, I guess correctly, she is indeed the ghost Dr. Fengjiu. She came here this time for the ancient 9-tailed spirit fox. I don't know much about it, so I invited her here. I'll arrange for you to meet her tomorrow. ancient nine-tailed spiritual fox. He pondered for a moment before saying, I didn't expect you to come for the ancient nine-tailed spiritual fox. He paused for a moment and said, I got it. Take good care of them. I'll pay them a visit tomorrow. Then I'll go back first. He bowed and left. After he left, the old man started searching in his own space. Let's see if the map and records are still there. Wang Yu came back from the back of the mountain. She was about to visit her parents when she saw the housekeeper hurriedly looking for her. Young master, I've finally found you. The head of the family wants you to make a trip to the main courtyard. The housekeeper said as he wiped the sweat from his forehead. He looked around the mansion but couldn't find her, so he thought that she might have gone to the back of the mountain. As he was about to go to the back of the mountain, he saw her. Wang Yu smiled and opened the fan in her hand. She gently fanned herself and said, I'm going there. Well, you can go about your business. As she spoke, she walked to the main courtyard. Chapter 4180. Seeing him coming, family head Wang glanced at the guards in the city and said, You can all leave. Yes, sir. The guard responded and left the room. Come in with me. Family head Wang said and stepped into the room with his hands behind his back. Mrs. Wang followed him in. Wang Yu touched his chin and thought for a while. He closed his fan and followed them in. When he entered the room, he saw that they looked a little dignified. He asked, Father, Mother, what's wrong? What is the background of this friend of yours? The Wang family head asked directly. Hearing this, Wang Yu grinned and said, Father, she's just staying with us for a few days and will leave in 2 days. Why do you want to find out her background? Who is Miss Feng? Do you know what she gave us as a greeting gift in the hall? Madame Wang asked as she pulled him to the side to greet her. What did she give you? Wang Yu asked curiously. She gave us a 7th level top-grade elixir. Family head Wang said and took out the medicine bottle and put it on the table. A 7th level top-grade elixir? Wang Yu was also surprised. Seeing his father take out an exquisite medicine bottle, he took it, opened it, and poured out the contents. After taking a look, he couldn't help but be stunned. This is not an ordinary 7th level best grade pill. This pill is cloud-breaking pill, which can help you break through your cultivation. Yes, this gift is too expensive. 7th level elixirs are hard to find on the market, let alone the cloud-breaking elixir. Holding this elixir, I feel a little uneasy. He sighed softly, looked at Wang Yu and said, Tell me honestly, who is this Miss Feng? Why did she give us such a treasure? And should we accept this elixir or return it to her? The main reason was that the gift was too expensive, and they knew nothing about her. If she just came to stay for 2 days and gave him such a valuable elixir, even if he was tempted, he would not dare to accept it. Listening to his words, Wang Yu knew what he was thinking. He pondered for a while and said, Father, since she gave it to you, just accept it. As for her identity and background, forgive me for not being able to tell you. I can only say that she is a very honorable person. During these days in the mansion, we only need to receive her with all our hearts. Don't ask about anything else, and don't care about it. Hearing this, family head Wang and his wife looked at each other. Since he said so, they said, We know. Father, keep this pill. Don't let anyone know about it. I'll discuss the matter of the pill with grandfather later. Let's see which of you is the best choice for our Wang clan. I'll go back first. Well, don't worry. We know that. The Wang family head said as he put the pills into his space. After watching him leave, he suddenly seemed to react. He looked at his wife and said strangely, Madam, didn't you or seem to have changed into a different person just now? Why did he give people a feeling of steadiness and wisdom? Am I hallucinating? Hearing this, Mrs. Wang was also stunned. She said doubtfully, He seems to be a different person. He is a little different from usual. Hearing this, family head Wang looked outside thoughtfully. No one knew what he was thinking, and he did not speak for a long time. Chapter 4181. Old Master returned to the courtyard early this morning. Old Master has been cultivating in the back of the mountain for nearly 10 years. When I heard that Master was holding a 100th birthday celebration for Old Master, I also hoped that Old Master could come out of the cave residence in the back of the mountain and stay in the mansion for a few days. After all, There are many people outside who are saying that our Wang family is declining day by day, because Old Master's strength has regressed, and he doesn't have much life left. Now that Old Master has returned to the courtyard, and his complexion is very good, if people outside know, they will definitely not say that. A servant girl said softly, her words carrying unconcealable joy and excitement. Do you want to die? How dare you talk about Old Master in the mansion? Hurry up and shut up. Don't let the masters hear, or you will be severely punished. Another servant girl, who was slightly older, said nervously. She looked around and saw that no one was around, then patted her chest and sighed in relief. The young servant girl stuck out her tongue and said, I don't mean anything else, I'm just too happy. This is the first time I've seen Old Master since I entered the mansion. He looks even younger than my grandfather. I can't tell that he is 100 years old. That's right, Old Master's cultivation is there. Naturally, no ordinary person can compare to him. As the older servant girl said, she pulled her and said, let's go to the front yard and see if there's anything we can help with. Servants like us shouldn't talk too much about the master's matters. As the two walked further and further away, Fengjiu, who was sitting on the tree and enjoying the scenery, stretched and took out a spiritual fruit to eat. Her legs were propped up on the tree branch, and one hand was behind her head. Her whole body could be said to be half lying on the tree. She looked around and saw all the courtyards of the prince's mansion clearly. She saw and heard the busy figures of the servants, and the whispers of the occasional conversation. After finishing the fruit, she squinted her eyes and half lay on the tree, enjoying the gentle breeze of the morning and feeling the fresh air between the trees. She half closed her eyes, but the green lotus chi in her body was circulating, attracting the spiritual chi of heaven and earth in the morning, as well as the vitality of the plants. After the Wang family ancestor took a bath, he wanted to take a walk around the mansion. After all, he had been cultivating in the cave at the back of the mountain for 10 years. Although he seemed familiar with the mansion, he was actually unfamiliar with it. He walked around the manor. When he passed by the trees next to the rockery, Old Master Wang stopped and suddenly looked up. When he saw the girl in red dozing off on the tree, a wise light flashed in his eyes. He asked, May I ask, is this Miss Feng? She was dressed in red and looked peerless. The woman on the tree was very recognizable. Hearing the voice, Fengjiu opened her eyes and looked down. She saw an old man slightly cupping his hands and looking at her. Thus, she jumped down from the tree and landed in front of the old man. I am. Are you the ancestor of the Wang clan? Fengjiu asked, but his tone sounded more certain. The robe of the old man in front of her was not outstanding, but the material was of high quality. Although he did not seem very strong to her, he was stronger than the rest of the people in the mansion. Therefore, other than the ancestor of the Wang clan, there was probably no one else. Hearing this, the old man smiled kindly. That's me. As he spoke, he paused and smiled. I heard you mention Miss Feng. I wanted to pay you a visit, but I didn't expect to meet you here. Chapter 4182. There's a pavilion over there. Why don't we go there and have a seat? The Wang clan ancestor pointed at a pavilion not far away. All right. Fengjiu agreed, and walked with him towards the pavilion. After the two sat down in the pavilion, the old man waved his hand, and a soundproof barrier was set up. He looked at Fengjiu and smiled. You has already told me, but I didn't expect to see someone like the ghost doctor in my Wang clan. If there's anything that the Wang clan has not received you well, please forgive us. No, the Wang clan is very good, Fengjiu said with a smile. I heard from you that the ghost doctor wants to inquire about the nine-tailed fox spirit. However, it's been 10 years since then. Even this old man doesn't know if the ancient nine-tailed fox spirit is still in the Azure Demon Forest. This old man is worried that he won't be able to help the ghost doctor. As he spoke, he took out an old map from the space and said, This is the map we used back then. There are markings on it. Back then, when we were in a desperate situation, we met the ancient nine-fox spirit fox. This is the place where we met it. He pointed at a place on the map and said, This place is a canyon in the depths of the Azure Demon Forest. There are many powerful ferocious beasts, but there are no ferocious beasts in this area. Back then, we left along this area. Later on, I guessed that this area should be the territory of the ancient nine-tailed fox spirit, so no other ferocious beasts dared to come close. Fengjiu looked at the place he was pointing at and said, "This place looks quite big. Yes, even if we fly on the sword, it will take a day to get out of this area. However, there are many trees there, so it's not suitable for flying. Most of the time, we have to walk. I remember that back then, we walked for 3 to 4 days with injuries." The Wang clan ancestor said, looking at Fengjiu and said, "Because of my injuries back then, I have been cultivating in seclusion ever since I came back. In these 10 years, I have rarely inquired about the outside world. I don't know what changes have happened in the Azure Demon Forest. If you want to go, it's better to bring more people." Fengjiu smiled and said, "I brought a few people." "A few people?" The Wang clan ancestor was startled, then smiled and shook his head. "How can a few people do it? Back then, my group of 60 to 70 people, but less than 20 people came back alive." He took out another piece of paper and said, "I thought about it last night and drew the ancient nine-tailed spirit fox that I saw that year. Back then, the ancient nine-tailed spirit fox was still a cub and had not yet matured. Now it has only been 10 years. For an ancient divine beast, if there is no opportunity, not to mention 10 years, even 1,000 years may not be enough for it to mature." Fengjiu watched him open the paper. On the paper, the nine-tailed fox appeared vividly in front of her eyes. Looking at the nine-tailed fox, Fengjiu smiled. "This nine-tailed fox is very beautiful. The ancient nine-tailed fox spirit is an extremely beautiful divine beast. Its appearance is unforgettable." The Wang clan ancestor smiled and handed the drawing to her, saying, "This is all I know about the nine-tailed fox spirit. If you want to go, you can use my Wang clan's transmission formation to save time. You can also directly go to the transmission formation set up by the Wang clan in the Azure Demon Forest." Chapter 4183. Looking at Fengjiu, the old ancestor of the Wang family smiled and said, "It's rare for Ghost Doctor to come to Azure Demon City. Stay here for a few more days. Let Yuer accompany you around. Besides, it's my 100th birthday in 2 days. If Ghost Doctor doesn't mind, please stay and join in the fun." "Okay." Fengjiu nodded and said with a smile, "Since there's a transmitting formation in the mansion that leads directly to Azure Demon Forest, we'll stay here for 2 more days." The two chatted in the pavilion for a while. Occasionally, the servants who passed by the rockery looked at the old master, and the distinguished guests brought back by the young master in the pavilion. They were surprised. Driven by curiosity, they wanted to listen to what they were talking about, but they couldn't hear their voices. They knew that there was a soundproof bounded domain. When Wang Yu heard that his grandfather and Fengjiu were at the rockery, he came to find them. Seeing them talking happily in the pavilion, he walked up to them. At this time, the soundproof bounded domain in the pavilion had been removed. "Grandfather, Miss Feng." He bowed and greeted the two of them. "Haha, Yuer is here." The old master of the Wang family smiled and said, "I haven't been back for a long time, so I thought I'd take a walk around the mansion in the morning before visiting Miss Feng. I didn't expect to meet you here. Your grandfather invited me to his 100th birthday. I think I'll have to stay here for a few more days." Fengjiu smiled and looked at Wang Yu. Hearing this, Wang Yu was slightly surprised and showed a happy expression. "It's our honor that Miss Feng is willing to stay and attend my grandfather's birthday. You accompany Miss Feng to play around. You must be a good host." The old master of the Wang family stood up and smiled at Fengjiu. "Miss Feng, I'll go back first." Fengjiu also stood up and said, "Okay. Take care, old Master Wang." The old master of the Wang family nodded, and then turned to leave with a smile. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. The higher one's position is, the more extraordinary one's status is, and the more extraordinary one's cultivation is. The ghost Dr. Fengjiu was so famous, and his strength was so extraordinary, but his actions did not have a trace of arrogance. Instead, he was elegant, courteous, and approachable. He was truly a rare character. After her grandfather left, Wang Yu asked, "Miss Feng, I wonder what my grandfather said can help you?" Fengjie smiled and said, Old master found the route that year and drew me a picture of the nine-tailed spirit fox overnight. These are all very useful to us. Moreover, he also said that we can use the teleportation formation in your residence. That's good, Wang Yu said with a smile. She looked at the weather and said, Today's weather is good. Why don't I accompany you to the suburbs to play? The Green Cloud Jade Pool not far from Azure Demon City is a good place to visit. All right, Fengjie said and walked to the plum garden with her. He called Du Fan, Leng Shuang, and Yi Feifei, and then went out with Wang Yu in the carriage. There were 2 carriages. Du Fan and Wang Yu sat in one, and Fengjie and the other 2 sat in the other. Sitting in the carriage, Du Fan and Wang Yu naturally chatted. To Du Fan's surprise, Wang Yu was very knowledgeable. No matter what he talked about, he could talk about it. Along the way, he began to admire him a little more. Chapter 4184. Wang Yu lifted the curtain and took a look. When she saw the familiar people, she frowned and turned back to Du Fan, saying, Brother Du, you sit for a while. I'll go down and have a look. Then she got out of the carriage and went forward. In front of her, a carriage blocked the road. In front of the carriage, several childs in brocade clothes looked askance at Wang Yu, who was coming over with their arms crossed. One of them sneered and said with a kind face, Wang Yu, where are you going? Zheng San, wasn't the lesson last time enough? Today you come to provoke me again? Are you asking for a beating? Wang Yu opened the fan in her hand and glanced at the man who spoke. Seeing that his eyes were still swollen and his face was blue and red, Wang Yu closed the fan in her hand and patted her palm gently, saying, I don't have time to play with you today. Hurry up and tell your people to get out of the way. And you guys don't make trouble. Then she glanced at the 3 people around Zheng San. Zheng San ignored her, but looked at the carriage behind her and asked, Who's in your carriage? Wang Yu glanced at him and said, It's none of your business. You. Zheng San was annoyed. When he was about to roll up his sleeves and fight with her, he was stopped by the people around him. Didn't you say that you won't fight today? Don't be impulsive. The wound on your face hasn't healed yet. Yes, Wang Yu hit us hard. We didn't come here to fight with her today. 2 men in brocade clothes next to him pulled him and said in a low voice, looking curiously at the carriage behind Wang Yu. In fact, they heard from Zheng San that there was a beauty in red living in the Wang family. When they learned that Wang Yu took the beauty out today, they wanted to follow and have a look. I won't fight with you today. As Zheng San spoke, he waved his hand and signaled for the carriages to move to the side. He stood on the side of the carriage and stared at the 2 carriages, thinking that he should find an opportunity to lift the curtain and take a look to see if it was the beauty from the other day. Wang Yu saw them staring at the carriage, so she paid more attention. Today she brought Fengjie out to play. She didn't want these people to cause any trouble. Thus, after boarding the carriage, he sat outside and didn't enter. Instead, he paid attention to them. When he saw the carriage pass by them, Zheng San actually took a big stride forward and was about to lift the curtain, causing his face to darken. This idiot! He cursed in a low voice. A chi blade shot out from his hand and hit his knee. Ouch! Zheng San took a big step forward and directly knelt down. His knees heavily knelt on the ground, causing him to suck in a breath of cold air. Lowering his head, he saw that there was already blood faintly seeping out from his knees. Hiss! Seeing the 2 carriages pass by in front of their eyes and go into the distance, they immediately cursed angrily. Wang Yu, you bastard! Seeing that the people behind him were still standing there in a daze, he shouted at them. What are you looking at? Hurry and help me up. Third young master, your knee is injured. Why don't you go back to the mansion and deal with it first? One of the men in brocade clothes said. Seeing that his knee was bleeding, he couldn't help but feel pain. He knelt down heavily on the gravel without any warning. It was too painful. Chapter 4185. Driving the carriage on the road, Jianshu looked back and said to his master in the carriage, Master, they are following us. Don't worry about them. Drive your carriage. Wang Yu said, ignoring the carriage behind them. As long as they did not make trouble, they could follow them. The carriage moved forward slowly until it reached its destination. Wang Yu and Du Fan got off the carriage first and went to the carriage behind to wait for Fengjiu to get off. Look up ahead is the Green Cloud Jade Pool, and this area is a place to play and enjoy the scenery. In addition, there are wild animals in the forest over there. Some people who come together can try the fun of catching wild animals in the forest and eating wild animals. Wang Yu introduced them and said, "Let's go to the Green Cloud Pond in front. The water there is green and clear. You can go boating and fishing in the pond. If you are tired, you can also rest on the grass or in the pavilion." Fengjiu followed him to the Green Cloud Pond. Looking at the Green Cloud Pond in front of them, her eyes flashed and she said, "Where does the water in this pond come from?" She saw that the water near the Green Cloud Pond in front of them was so clear that the bottom could be seen. Gradually, there was a layer of faint mist on the surface of the pond, which set off with the green mountains and clear waters. It looked like a fairy. Moreover, standing by the pond, she could feel that there was a fluctuation of spiritual power in the water, which could not be possessed by ordinary pond water. It is said that the water in the Green Cloud Pond is the underground water source in the Cyan Demon Forest. There has been water in the pond since I can remember, because the environment here is very beautiful, and the water in the pond has a faint spiritual power. The surrounding trees and animals are affected by the pond water and grow very well. Wang Yu said with a smile, "There are also fish in the pond. The fish here are very delicious, but few people can catch them. You see, the people boating in the pond are fishing with fishing rods in their hands. They want to catch the fish in the pond. Why don't they go directly into the water to catch them? Isn't it faster?" Yi Feifei asked from the side. She stepped forward and scooped up a handful of water. She felt that the water was unusually cool. Wang Yu looked at the surface of the pool and said, "Someone went down, but he never came up again. Therefore, it is said that there are water monsters in the pool. You can only fish, but you can't go down to catch them." "Water monster?" Yi Feifei was startled and turned to look at him. Wang Yu nodded and said, "Yes, but no one has seen it. I don't know what it looks like. Maybe it's just a rumor, or it's deep in the pool." "That's interesting." Fengjiu's lips curled up slightly as he looked at the bitch and said, "Let's go boating on the surface of the pond as well. If we can catch a few fish, we can have a picnic here. Since that's the case, Feifei and I will go and pick up some branches. While we're at it, we'll see if there are any wild animals in the forest." Du Fan said with a smile as he gently fanned himself with the fan in his hand. "Jian Shu, you follow Child Du and pick up some branches around." Wang Yu ordered his attendant to stay and help. "Yes," Jian Shu answered and looked at Du Fan saying, "Child Du, I'll take you there." So Du Fan, Yi Feifei and Jian Shu went to the forest, while Fengjiu Leng Shuang and Wang Yu went boating. Chapter 4186. His eyes lit up and he said excitedly to the people around him, Look, it's the woman in red. She's the most beautiful woman I've ever seen." Where? Let me see." The three brocade-robed men next to him squeezed forward and looked in the direction he pointed. They saw several figures standing on the boat. In addition to Wang Yu, whom they were familiar with, there was a woman in red and a woman in black. "I can't see clearly. They're a little far away, and there's some fog over there. I only know that there are two women, one in red and one in black," one of them said, trying hard to open his eyes, but he still couldn't see the appearance of the two women. Let's go boating and see clearly." Zheng San's face was full of lust and he almost drooled. At this time, there were only a few boats on the surface of the Cyan Cloud Pond. In the light fog, the boats were shrouded in it, and they were looming, which had a different artistic conception. Fengjiu sat on a small stool, took the fishing rod, and threw the hook into the pond. The hook sank into the pond. Next to him, Wang Yu also fished, but she didn't have much hope. After all, although there were many people fishing here today, at most 1 out of 10 people could catch a fish in the pond. The hook was quiet, and there was no fish under the water. Fengjiu raised his eyebrows and said, "If the water is clear, there are no fish. Are you sure there are fish in the water?" Wang Yu smiled and said, "Yes, there are. But the fish in the deep water are less likely to be hooked. Seeing this, Fengjiu's eyes moved slightly, and he wanted to know if there were fish under the water. So his palm moved, and a wisp of green lotus vitality was injected into the hook. The pure aura of spiritual power and the green lotus vitality spread under the water. Within a breath, a fish swam out of the water and bit the hook. Fengjiu smirked when he felt the movement of the fishing rod in his hand. He waited for the fish to bite down before pulling it out of the water. With a splash of water, a palm-sized fish jumped out of the water and fluttered. The fish tail swung and water droplets splashed. Wang Yu was stunned and asked, "Did you catch it?" "Spiritual fish?" Fengjiu was a little surprised. He thought it would be an ordinary fish, but he didn't expect it to be a spirit fish. It must be known that this kind of natural spirit fish was helpful to cultivators' cultivation. Even ordinary people who ate it could strengthen their body and prevent all kinds of diseases. "Look, someone caught a fish on the boat over there. And it's a big fish the size of a palm." When the people on the other boat saw the fish that Fengjiu caught, they couldn't help but exclaim. They said to the old man, "Quickly, quickly, row over there, row over there." Lung Shuang handed over the fish basket and put the fish in it. He saw his master studying the fish in the basket with great interest. "Tut, tut, this is a first-level spirit fish. It seems that this place is really a spirit land. I wonder how many spirit fish are there in the water." She looked at the clear pond with bright eyes. Seeing that it was dark in the depths, she couldn't see clearly. She couldn't help but have an idea. Chapter 4187. Fengjiu smiled and said, "This is a first-level spiritual fish. It is not only delicious." She stared at the pool. Her eyes moved slightly. No one knew what she was thinking. "Miss, are you selling the fish? If you sell it, I can buy it from you at a high price." A middle-aged man sitting in a small boat asked in a loud voice. "And also let the man in the boat row the boat over." "Sorry, I'm not selling it," Fengjiu said, and said to the old man rowing the boat, "Row to a deeper place. Inside, the fog is too heavy, it may not be safe." The old man said with some hesitation, "It doesn't matter, nothing will happen." Fengjiu smiled. Seeing this, Wang Yu said to the old man, "Paddle over. We will be fine." Hearing Wang Yu say so, the old man responded and rowed to the depths. As they went deeper, their figures gradually disappeared in the thick fog. How did they go in? The deeper the green cloud jade pool is, the thicker the fog is, and the more dangerous it is. "Do they want to die?" A man in brocade said, looking at Fengjiu and the others who went in, his eyebrows wrinkled. "Let's go in too," Zhang San said, "and let the man in the boat row in." "No. Something will happen. We can't go in anymore, go back. Let's go to the shore and wait." The man in brocade next to him stopped him, and said to the man in the boat, "Row back to the shore. What can happen? They dare to go in, why can't we go in?" Zhang San said with displeasure. "No means no. If something happens, we can't explain it." "Yes. They are them, we are us, it is not the same. Anyway, we just want to see the beauty in red. Since she went into the depths, and the fog is so heavy, we can't see clearly. It is better to go to the shore and wait." Listening to the two people, Zhang San did not say more, and let the man row the boat back. The middle-aged man in the other boat watched Fengjiu and the others go in, and was slightly surprised. The old man wearing a bamboo hat next to him looked up, and thoughtfully looked at the small boat in the fog. "Follow him," the old man said. Hearing this, the middle-aged man was slightly startled, but he didn't say anything. He just let the small boat row over. Fengjiu, who was inside, saw that the fog was thicker, and he could barely see beyond 3 meters. So he said, "All right, let's stop here." As she spoke, she took out a low-grade pill from her space. With a pinch of her fingers, she crushed the pill and sprinkled it into the pond beside the small boat. Lung Shuang watched quietly and did not make a sound. Wang Yu was slightly surprised and asked, "Miss Feng, what are you doing?" "Fishing," she smirked and said. "Since this place is ownerless, it's a pity to leave these spiritual fish here and not catch them." "Fishing? How? How do we catch them?" he asked, slightly stunned. He also knew that these were spirit fish. It was not that no one wanted to come here to catch them, But even if they rowed a small boat to the depths of the pond, it would be difficult to catch them. These spirit fish hid in the depths of the pond and would not come out at all. Fengjiu chuckled. You'll know when you see it. Chapter 4188. When Wang Yu saw a large group of fish swimming up from the depths, she could not help but look at Fengjiu in a daze. She took something out of her sleeve and threw it into the pool. She only saw a silver light flashing in front of her eyes, and then it disappeared into the water. Collect! Fengjiu shouted softly. She pulled her hand and collected the net. At the same time, because of her strength, the small boat also shook violently. Fortunately, several people on the boat had cultivation, so they quickly stabilized. Be careful. Lung Shuang held the old man and waited for him to stand firm before letting him go. Thank you, Mississippi. Thank you. The old man breathed a sigh of relief. The boat shook violently, which really scared him. He knew that if he fell he would die. At this time, Fengjiu's face overflowed with a pleasant smile. She bent over, holding the boat with one hand and holding the silver net with the other. She said to Wang Yu, who was still in a daze, "Give me a hand." Oh, okay. Wang Yu came to her senses. When she saw that there were dozens of big fish in the silver net, she could not help but shake her mind. She hurried forward to help pull the silver net. I'll help you row the boat back to the shore, Lung Shuang said and stood on the old man's side. He tried to keep the boat from turning over to one side and helped the old man row the boat. The fish struggled against the net, trying their best to break free. However, no matter how hard they struggled, no matter how hard they tried to bite the silver net did not show any signs of damage. This scene was seen by the middle-aged man and the old man sitting on the boat not far away. Both of them looked surprised, and the astonishment in their eyes was obvious. The man who helped them row the boat saw this and could not help but say with envy, "They caught a big net of fish. How did they do it? These fish are hidden in the depths of the pool, and they caught so many. They really made a lot of money this time." Yi Feifei and Jian Shu piled up branches in an open space on the shore. Du Fan had not returned from looking for game, so they sat on the grass and waited. When they saw the boat coming back, Yi Feifei showed a happy smile. "My master is back." Jian Shu looked and saw his master bending over, holding a silver net in one hand. There were fish in it. Jian Shu could not help but widen his eyes. Aren't they fishing? How did they use the net? How did they catch so many? Yes, they can't eat all of them. Yi Feifei frowned and said, "What's more, the fish die as soon as they leave the water. It's too wasteful." Jian Shu's mouth. Of. You can't catch it, but that doesn't mean my master can't catch it. As Fengjiu's boat approached the shore, the people on the shore surrounded them and stared at them. Hiss, how did they cast the net? How did they catch so many fish? Isn't it impossible to cast a net in this pool? Last time, someone cast a net, but the net was bitten through. Look, the scales of these fish are glowing with a green luster. There are almost no small fish. They are all big fish that weigh more than 10 catties. Isn't that young master you? Chapter 4189. In the pavilion, because of the noise, the man in luxurious clothes and an elegant and beautiful woman looked at each other and walked to the shore. Because there were many people around, they didn't push forward. They just stood at the back and watched. Unexpectedly, they saw an acquaintance. When the man in luxurious clothes saw Wang Yu, he couldn't help glancing at the woman beside him and said with a smile, "Qiushua, look, I didn't expect to meet Wang Yu here." Wan Qiushua glanced at the front, and her eyes fell on Wang Yu, who was bending over. Then she looked at Fengjiu, who was in red. When she saw her beautiful face, there was a ripple in her eyes, but her voice was flat with disdain and contempt. "Wang Yu is just a playboy. I guess he is here to accompany the beauty to play." The man in luxurious clothes looked at Fengjiu, who was in red, and saw her looking down at the fish in the water. A strand of hair fell on her cheek and was pushed to her ear by her hand. At that moment, her charm and smile dazzled his eyes and made him stunned. He had seen his fair share of beauties. Even Wan Qiushua, the third miss of the Ruan clan, was a well-known beauty. However, compared to this red-clothed beauty, Ruan Qiushue was like a dim firefly, while the other woman was like the blazing sun, radiant and eye-catching, making her unforgettable. On the other side, Fengjiu got off the boat first and said to Wang Yu, "The spiritual fish can't be dragged up the cliff, or it will die soon. You have to stay on the boat and ask someone to go back to the mansion to get a big bucket." Hearing that, Wang Yu shouted to Jian Shu, "Jian Shu, go back to the mansion and get 2 big buckets." Okay. Jian Shu wanted to go forward, but when he heard his master's words, he quickly flew to the city on his sword. Fortunately, it was not far from the city. Especially if he flew on his sword, it would save more time. "Young Master Yu, can you sell me one of the fish?" A practitioner came forward and asked. He looked at the spiritual fish weighing more than 10 kilograms with envy in his eyes. "Sorry, this fish is my friend's," Wang Yu said and looked at Fengjiu. Hearing that, the practitioner looked at Fengjiu and asked, "Miss, I wonder." "Sorry, I'm not selling this fish." Fengjiu smiled faintly and stood on the shore. She thought that most of the spiritual fish were of the first level, and their scales should be used as medicine. Moreover, the first-level spiritual fish could only be found. Dufan came forward with the hare and a pheasant. Looking at the net of fish, he couldn't help but laugh. "It seems like we have a great harvest. I've also hunted 2 wild animals. We won't be able to finish them today." He inwardly shook his head and smiled. This was indeed something that only his master would do. One must know that the silver net was not an ordinary net. Only his master would be willing to use such a treasure to catch fish. The man in luxurious clothes with Ruan Qiushue kept looking at Fengjiu, as if he had forgotten that Ruan Qiushue was beside him. He stepped forward and bowed to Fengjiu like an elegant gentleman. He smiled and introduced himself. "Miss, I'm Han Yuqing." After that, he stood up straight and looked at Fengjiu with a smile, as if he thought that she would know who he was after he said his name. Chapter 4190. Han Yuqing was taken aback, and he could not maintain the smile on his face. He looked at the people around him, who were trying to stifle their laughter, and took a deep breath to soothe his disappointment. Then he smiled and said, "It doesn't matter if we didn't know each other before. From this moment on, we know each other." Fengjiu pursed her lips and said, "I'm not interested in knowing you." Pft! Ha 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 ha. Someone couldn't help but laugh. Looking at Han Yuqing's defeated face, they felt a sense of satisfaction. Ruan Qiushue, who was standing at the back, saw this scene, and her expression turned ugly. She looked at Han Yuqing, then at the beautiful woman in red, and a cold light flashed in her eyes. Because she was standing at the back of the crowd, no one noticed when she moved her sleeve to reveal a silver needle between her fingers. She secretly channeled her spiritual energy and shot the needle at Fengjiu. When the silver needle was shot, a smug look flashed in her eyes, and a smile appeared on her face. However, the next moment, the smile on her face froze. The woman in red, who had been standing there, had coincidentally shifted her body at that moment, and the silver needle had missed her acupuncture point and shot into the pond behind her. Was she too lucky? She had actually dodged it? Anger appeared on her face, and her gaze was fixed on Fengjiu. Therefore, she did not see the cold light that flashed in Dufan and Leng Shuang's eyes. Fengjiu's gaze seemed to inadvertently sweep over the woman, and the corners of her lips curled into a faint smile. She looked away and looked at Dufan, saying, "The weather is good now. You catch one tail, and deal with it first. We'll make fish soup." "Okay," Dufan replied. He called Yi Feifei and walked towards the small boat. "Everyone, you can leave now. I don't intend to sell this fish." Fengjiu glanced at the crowd as she spoke, and then walked with Leng Shuang to the place where the branches were placed. Hearing her words, the crowd felt that it was normal. After all, if they were in her shoes, they would not be willing to sell it either. This kind of spiritual fish was not something that could be bought easily, so they would naturally keep it for themselves. However, seeing Fengjiu turn to leave, Ruan Qiushue was still unwilling to stop. Seeing that Fengjiu's back was facing her, the silver needle in her hand once again aimed at Fengjiu's acupuncture point. The silver needle was aimed at Fengjiu's acupuncture point, at the back of Fengjiu's neck. If the needle the result, it would cause paralysis. It's obvious how vicious the woman was. If it was an ordinary person, the force of a silver needle would be extremely small, and the person's back was facing her, so it would probably be very difficult for that person to avoid it. However, the person she was facing was Feng Jiao, an expert who possessed great strength, so it was naturally impossible for her to not notice that this silver needle was flying towards her. Leng Shuang stopped when she noticed the air blade coming at her master from behind. At the same time, Feng Nine turned around and caught the silver needle that was coming at her. She turned her hand and shot it back at Leng Shuang. Xiao! A silver needle as thin as a hair shot out from Feng Jiao's hand and pierced the acupuncture point on Ruan Qiushua's right hand. Almost at the same time, Ruan Qiushua cried out in pain. Ah! Qiushua! Han Yuqing hurriedly supported her and looked at Feng Jiao. Chapter 4191. Her voice was calm, but there was a sense of power in it. After she finished speaking, she did not care about the angry look on her face, nor did she care about who she was. She then turned around and continued to walk forward. Han Yuqing supported Ruan Qiushua and frowned. Qiushua, she hasn't offended you. Why did you attack her? He had been shocked when he had seen the silver needle aimed at the acupuncture point on her neck. However, he had not expected her to be able to catch it. Furthermore, what did she mean by once but not twice? Could it be that Qiushua had attacked her before? Ruan Qiushua clenched her trembling right hand and gritted her teeth. Her expression was cold as she spat. I don't like her. She doesn't like her. Because of her appearance, Han Yuqing's gaze had been fixed on her. When she saw the infatuation and amazement in his eyes, she was jealous. What right does a woman who had appeared out of nowhere have to be prettier than me? What right does she have to steal the spotlight and attention that should have belonged to me? Ruan Qiushua was one of the top beauties in Azure Demon City. Not only was her appearance outstanding, her family background was illustrious, and her own cultivation was not to be underestimated. No matter where she went, she was the subject of envy. However, this woman's appearance had stolen the spotlight that should have belonged to her. So what if she wanted to teach her a lesson? She was the daughter of an aristocratic family, so why couldn't she teach a foreign woman a lesson? However, the damnable thing was that this woman had dared to hurt her. Not too far away, the middle-aged man stood by the side with the old man and watched. When he saw this, the old man shook his head to himself. He only cast a glance at Ruan Qiushua's trembling hand before moving his gaze away. His gaze landed on the woman in red who was slowly walking away. His curiosity grew. Who on earth was this woman? When Ruan Qiushua had secretly attacked the woman in red, he had also seen it. However, he had not warned her, because he had sensed that the woman in red was very powerful. The man with the fan and the woman in black next to her were also very powerful. When Ruan Qiushua was secretly making a move, not only did he discover it, the others had also discovered it. However, they had chosen to ignore it. However, they had not expected that Ruan Qiushua would actually make a move against the red-clothed woman. Seeing the woman in red sitting down not far away and preparing to cook, the old man stroked his beard and said with a smile, "Get someone to catch some game and bring it back. Let's barbecue here as well." Hearing this, the middle-aged man was stunned for a moment, but he didn't say anything. He just responded and made a gesture. Not long after, two cultivators in tight clothes came in front of him. He whispered a few words and saw that the old man had already walked over to the woman in red and sat down not far from them. After giving some instructions, he also followed. Han Yuqing saw that Ruan Qiushua's hands were shaking nonstop, so he said, "Qiushua, I'll send you back first. Get a doctor to take a look at your hand." When Ruan Qiushua heard this, she could not help biting her lips. She had been bullied, but Han Yuqing had not said a word. He had even protected that woman. After all, their Han and Ruan clans were discussing their marriage, but he had just watched as she was bullied. Knowing that she was no match for them, Ruan Qiushua did not plan to stay for long. She said nothing and turned to leave. She might not be able to deal with them, but what about her family? Chapter 4192. Wang Yu, who was on the boat, looked at the scene, and shook her head secretly without saying anything. Wan Qiushue was too self-righteous to attack Fengjiu. Soon after, Jian Shu came back with a guard, a carriage, and 2 large wooden buckets. They carried the 2 large wooden buckets in the carriage to the pool below. "Master, the buckets are here," Jian Shu shouted while filling the buckets with some pool water. "Then come and help." Wang Yu had been holding the silver net on the boat and stabilizing the boat so that it would not be overturned by the struggling fish. At this time, seeing them come, she quickly asked them to come and help. "Be careful. Most of these fish are at the same level. If you are bitten, you may lose an arm. Moreover, they struggle very hard." Du Fan reminded them. Seeing their expressions, he shook his head and said with a smile, "Forget it. Let me do it." Yi Feifei looked at them with a smile. She took the fish that Du Fan had already prepared and said, "Brother Du, I will take this fish to make soup first." "Go ahead." Du Fan gestured and handed her the blue fish scales. "You take these first. Go back and dry them in the sun before giving them to master." "Okay, I know," Yi Feifei said. She took them and walked to Fengjiu. "Come to the shore. Don't let the fish slip away." Du Fan gestured and asked them to come to the shore. So, Wang Yu and the other 2 people held the silver net and opened the mouth. They saw Du Fan reach down and quickly grab a spiritual fish weighing more than 10 kilograms and put it into the big wooden bucket. The people who had originally dispersed saw him catching fish and walked closer to take a look. Their faces were filled with envy. "Hey, why are these 2 fish not the same?" Wang Yu said and looked at one of the fish that Du Fan caught. It was only the size of a palm and weighed at most 1 or 2 kilograms. However, the fish scales on the fish sometimes glowed blue and sometimes glowed blue. Du Fan glanced at it and saw that the last fish in the net was also the same. He put the 2 fish into the bucket and said, "These 2 are 2nd-level spiritual fish." Then he gestured, "Carry this to the side first." So, several people worked together to carry the 2 big wooden buckets to a cool place on the side, and 1 person stood there to guard. "Master, there are 19 fish in total, 2 of which are only the size of a palm. They are 2nd-level spiritual fish." Du Fan came to her side and sat down. "Oh, there are 2nd-level spiritual fish?" Feng Jiu was slightly surprised. He didn't expect this, so he got up and walked to the wooden barrel to take a look. Sure enough, he saw 2 palm-sized fish inside. The aura of the light on their bodies was different. The fish's scales were green and glowed blue. They were very beautiful. Here, they were leisurely enjoying this moment. On the other side, Wan Qiushue returned to the mansion. Her trembling hands made her feel a little scared. Thinking of the woman in red who said that one of her hands was destroyed, she could not help but worry. Therefore, when she arrived at the mansion and heard that her father and the master of the Han family were in the hall, she went straight to the hall. "Father!" Wu Wu Da, she cried into the hall, rushed into her father's arms, and cried with grievance. Unexpectedly, he saw his favorite daughter crying with grievance in front of the Han family. The master of the Wan family was stunned and asked, "What's wrong? Didn't you go out to play with Yuqing? Why did you come back crying?" Chapter 4193. Han Yuqing, who was following behind, quickly followed them in. Seeing that his father was also in the hall, he bowed to them. "Father, Uncle Ruan." As he spoke, he couldn't help but look at Ruan Qiushue. "Yuqing, what's going on?" Father Han asked in a deep voice. Han Yuqing was a little hesitant. He didn't know how to explain it. "Father, my hand hurts. My hand was injured by someone. It hurts so much." Wan Qiushue's face was covered in tears. At this moment, she no longer had the high and mighty attitude of a daughter from a noble family. Instead, she was complaining to her father like a little girl. Hearing this, the Wan family head looked down and saw that her hand was trembling. He immediately shouted, "Men, quickly get the doctor here." "Nephew Yuqing, you went out with Qiushue. How did her hand get injured like this? Who hurt her?" The Wan family head asked in a deep voice. It was obvious that he was suppressing his anger. It was a young lady. As Han Yuqing spoke, he added, "But it's not what you think." Qiushue plotted against the other party first, and that young lady then attacked. Hearing this, the Ruan family head looked displeased. In a lecturing tone he said, "Nephew Yuqing, our two families are discussing your marriage. Not to mention whether this marriage will succeed or not. You went out with Qiushua today. She was bullied to this extent. It's fine if you can't stand up for her. But how can you speak up for the other party? What do you think of Qiushua by doing this?" He moved his lips but didn't know what to say. He couldn't help but look at his father. When the Han family had heard his son's words, he thought to himself, so she was the one who attacked first. However, plotting against others isn't something to be proud of. Moreover, it's hard to talk about it. Thus, he didn't say anything else, and just scolded his son. "Yuqing, this is your fault. Let's not talk about the fact that we are discussing your marriage. As a man, you shouldn't have allowed Qiushu, a girl, to be hurt like this. Your uncle Ruan is right. You shouldn't have done that." As he spoke, he chuckled and said to Ruan Qiushua, "Qiushua, don't cry. Uncle will teach him a lesson when we get back. Right now, the most important thing is to let the doctor take a look at your hand." Patriarch. An old man carrying a medicine box walked in. He was the residence's physician, and also a pharmacist. When he heard that the third young Mrs. Hand was injured, and the patriarch asked him to come over, he put down what he was doing and rushed over. "It's good that you're here. Quickly take a look at Qiushu's hand. She has been trembling ever since she entered the hall," Master Ruan said, indicating for him to come forward. Yes. The old man stepped forward and asked Ruan Qiushua to sit at the side. Then he took her pulse. After checking her pulse, he couldn't help but frown. "How is it?" Ruan family head asked worriedly. Ruan Qiushua bit her lip and looked at the old man. She was a little nervous. "Third young miss, is your hand injured?" The old man asked. "No, it's just that a silver needle pricked me here. I pulled it out when I came back." Ruan Qiushua pointed at the place where the needle pricked her arm. Chapter 4194. Hearing this, the Ruan family head's face darkened. "What do you mean by powerless?" The old man sighed. "It means that I can't cure it. Not only can I not cure it, even if we find someone else, they probably won't be able to cure it either. This hand can only be treated by the person who did it. Since that person knows the acupuncture points, they should be able to treat this kind of injury. Otherwise, third Miss Hand can only be crippled, not to mention being unable to pick up a sword. Even holding a pair of chopsticks would be difficult." Hearing this, Ruan Qiushua panicked. "Father, quickly send someone to capture that woman." Saying this, he added, "She's currently at the Green Cloud Jade Pool. She used a silver net artifact to catch quite a few spiritual fish, each one weighing more than 10 kilograms. The Han family head's expression changed. "Spiritual fish from the Green Cloud Jade Pool? That's impossible, right? The fish caught there were only 2 fingers wide. He had never heard of a big fish weighing more than 10 kilograms. Moreover, even if there were, the pool was so deep that he couldn't see the bottom. It was impossible to catch a big fish in the pool." He couldn't help but look at his son, asking with his eyes. Seeing him nod slightly, he couldn't help but feel a little surprised. This was really strange. "Guards!" the Ruan family head shouted. "Patriarch!" Several guards hurried in and bowed respectfully. "Father, that woman is very strong. I'm afraid that the guards in the residence are no match for her," Ruan Qiushua hurriedly said. Hearing this, he frowned and pondered. "If that's the case, then I'll personally make a trip. Nephew Han, you've seen that woman before. How about you lead the way for us?" As he spoke, his sharp gaze looked at Han Yuqing. He hesitated, not because he was afraid of Fengjiu and the other's strength, but because he felt pity for such a beautiful woman. He knew that if she fell into the hands of the Ruan family, the consequences would be unimaginable. Seeing him like this, Ruan Qiushua was annoyed and said, "Father, there's no need for him to lead the way. I'll take you. Your head is still injured. Don't go back and forth." The Ruan family head disapproved. Hearing this, she thought for a moment, then gritted her teeth and said, "That woman was dressed in red, and she was followed by a woman in black and a man holding a fan. They were all very good looking, and could be recognized at a glance. Wang Yu of the Wang family was also with her. All right, father understands. You just wait at home. Wait for father to bring her back and treat your hand. Then, I'll deal with her properly. Wan family head glanced at Han Yuqing as he spoke. He flicked his sleeves and walked out with a cold snort. Hey, brother Wan! The Han family head shouted as he watched Han Yuqing stride away. He couldn't help but sigh and shake his head as he scolded Han Yuqing. You've really disappointed me. Come back with me. I'll definitely teach you a lesson. As he spoke, he smiled at Wan Qiushua and said, Qiushua, have a good rest. We'll be leaving first. As soon as he finished speaking, he led his men away. Seeing this, Han Yuqing wanted to say a few words to Wan Qiushua, but seeing her turn her back on him with a face full of anger, he didn't say anything and left with his father. After leaving the Wan residence, the Han family head sat in the carriage and said to a middle-aged man accompanying him, You follow behind and see what's going on. Yes, the middle-aged man replied and left alone. Chapter 4195. On one side, the Han father and son were talking about what happened at Qingyanbai Pond. On the other side, Master Wan led a team and rushed to Qingyanbai Pond. At the same time, the Wang family also got the news and knew what happened at Qingyanbai Pond. Master Wang was surprised and immediately went to find Master Wang and told him about it. Father, do we need to send someone to check it out? The Wan family sent a large group of people there. If they fight, I'm afraid you will be at a disadvantage. Master Wan said with some worry. After they left the mansion, he told his father about the elixir given by Fengjiu. However, according to his father, she was a very noble person, but he didn't tell him her identity. At this time, they had an accident outside, so he couldn't help but worry. After all, she also gave them such a precious elixir. If something happened, the Wang family couldn't help but protect her. Unexpectedly, his father chuckled and stroked his beard. No need. Just pretend you don't know. Don't worry about them. The Wan family has become more and more arrogant these years. Since he wants to seek his own death, we have no reason to stop him. Hearing this, Master Wang was surprised. Father, aren't you worried about Miss Feng and you are? Worried about what? Not to mention the little boy of the Wan family. Even if the old man of the Wan family comes out, he can't do anything to them. Don't worry. They will be fine. He waved his hand and was not worried at all. On the other side of Qingyanbai Pond, Fengjiu and others were drinking fish soup. A bowl of delicious fish soup exuded a rich spiritual aura and fresh taste, but there was no fishy smell at all. When the fish soup entered their stomachs, the spiritual aura in their bodies surged. They felt refreshed, as if all the pores on their bodies were open to breathe the air. It was extremely comfortable. The people around looked and couldn't help but swallow, but they could only watch, smell the fresh smell in the air, and imagine the delicious taste. When the pot of fish soup was finished, the few of them began to eat the roasted meat. After eating and drinking to their fill, they were about to go to the pavilion to play a few games of chess, when they saw a large group of people coming towards them aggressively. It's the master of the Wan family. Wang Yu looked at those people and frowned slightly. She didn't expect that Wan Qiushua would encourage her father to cause trouble. That group of people quickly stepped forward and surrounded them, causing the surrounding people to whisper to each other. The master of the Wan family came forward from behind. After glancing at Wang Yu, his eyes fell on Feng Nine, who was dressed in red. He looked her up and down unscrupulously, and then he let out a harsh shout. What a vicious woman! How dare you break my daughter's hand? From the moment Feng Nine let the woman go, she knew that if the woman wanted revenge, she would definitely come here. Therefore, she did not go back to the mansion after putting the spiritual fish in a bucket. Instead, she had a picnic here and waited for the trouble to be solved. If the other party was tactful, perhaps this matter would be over. If the other party wanted to take revenge, then it would be better for them to settle it here, so as to avoid implicating the Wang clan. It was obvious that the other party had delivered themselves to her doorstep. Moreover, the moment they opened their mouths, they were making false accusations. Since that was the case, she didn't mind playing along with them. Master Wan, it's not like that. It was third Miss Wan who attacked my friend first. Wang Yu came forward to explain. Chapter 4196. Hearing this, Fengjiu smiled and asked, "Is this the cultivation of the aristocratic families? Or is it because you are one of the 8 aristocratic families in Azure Demon City, so you can be so unreasonable?" Master Wan narrowed his eyes, glanced at Wang Yu, and sneered in a deep voice. "Do you think the Wang family can protect you?" "The Wang family can't protect me?" Fengjiu raised her eyebrows. "As far as I know, the Wang family is also one of the 8 aristocratic families in this city." The Wan family head raised his head and laughed loudly. His tone was arrogant as he said, "The Wang family is competing day and night. Even if they want to protect you, they can't do it." "Really? Then believe it or not, I can remove your Wan family from the list of the 8 aristocratic families in Azure Demon City in one day." Feng Jiu casually played with her fingers. Her voice was faint and casual. However, her words shocked everyone around her. Even the Wan family head was no exception. The Wan clan head stared at the lady in red in front of him. He saw that her expression was indifferent, without the slightest bit of fear. Her actions were even more graceful and calm. The words that came out of her mouth were as natural and casual, as if she was talking about the weather today. This caused his heart to skip a beat, and he began to guess her identity. This woman was obviously a foreigner. Even if he didn't know her origin, he guessed that she was just a daughter of an aristocratic family. He was not afraid of any aristocratic family. What was more, Azure Demon City was also a big city. As one of the 8 aristocratic families in this city, how could the Wan family not have a background? At that moment he sneered. "How arrogant you are. Today, no matter who you are, I will catch you and take you back to the mansion. If you cure my daughter's hand, I may spare your life. Otherwise, I will make you wish you were dead. Guards, catch her," he shouted in a deep voice and raised his hand to ask the guards to come forward. "Who dares?" Wang Yu shouted and stepped forward. "Arrest Wang Yu as well." The master of the Wan family shouted angrily. "Yes." The guard beside him immediately responded and stepped forward to seize them. At this moment, Jian Shu pulled out his sword and stood beside his young master. Leng Shuang, on the other hand, had already walked to the wooden barrel guarded by the guard of the Wang family. She watched this scene coldly. Fengjiu looked at Master Wan with a faint smile. He was neither surprised nor angry, as if he was a bystander. Looking at this scene, he said to Du Fan beside him, "Destroy his cultivation." "All right," Du Fan replied. His figure shot out like a bolt of lightning towards the Wan clan head. The Wan family head hadn't even recovered from Feng Jiu's words about the person who had crippled his cultivation when he saw the man holding the fan come to his side. He grabbed his hand and kicked him, causing him to kneel down. A powerful pressure shrouded him, and at that moment he couldn't move at all. An aura of death shrouded him. The feeling of being at the mercy of others made him panic and fear. The arrogance between his eyebrows finally disappeared, and what replaced it was horror and fear. "No, no." He only had time to let out a trembling cry. Then he felt that all his cultivation was gone from his body. As his cultivation of spiritual power was destroyed, his whole face changed rapidly. Chapter 4197. Family Head. The guards exclaimed and quickly slashed at Du Fan with their swords. However, they were brushed away by the fan in his hand. One by one, they retreated several meters away, spilling blood from their mouths. The old man and the middle-aged man looked at this scene and could not help but gasp. They looked at Du Fan and Feng Jiu. The family head of one of the 8 great families was crippled by them just like that. It seemed that the Azure Demon City was going to change. Du Fan threw him away. Seeing him fall to the ground, the guards quickly went forward to help him up and shouted, "Get out!" The guards supported their family head and retreated step by step. They did not dare to follow them. Even their family head's strength was crippled. Even if they attacked together, they were no match for those people. Now it was better to send their family head back to the mansion. The members of the Han clan, who were watching from behind, saw that the Wan clan head's cultivation had been crippled. Their hearts were in turmoil. and they could not help but quickly leave to report to their master. At this time, the old man and the middle-aged man came forward. Looking at Fengjiu, the old man sighed and said, "Miss, you crippled the family head of one of the 8 great families. They will not let you go. You'd better run for your life." Fengjiu smiled and said carelessly, "Since I dared to cripple his cultivation, I am not afraid of his family's revenge." Then he said to Wang Yu, "Let's go. Let people take the 2 buckets of fish." Okay. Wang Yu recovered with great difficulty. Her whole heart was in turmoil. The family head of the Ruan family was crippled. This was good news for the Wang family. However, the Ruan family would not give up. She did not know what would happen when things developed. The news spread like the wind. Before Fengjiu and the others returned to the Azure Demon City, the whole Azure Demon City knew that the family head of the Ruan family was crippled. At the same time, the family head of the Ruan family, who was sent back to the Ruan family, had fainted. Because of this, the Ruan family fell into great panic and uneasiness. Father, Ruan Qiushue ran to the front yard and saw that the physicians and uncles of the clan were all gathered there. She squeezed her way forward to take a look and almost fainted. This is impossible. This is impossible. Pa! Ah! A heavy slap landed on Ruan Qiushue's face, and her whole body was thrown to the ground. "You scourge! It's all your fault. You're the one who caused Patriarch's cultivation to be crippled." Scourge. After a clan elder found out the reason and saw Ruan Qiushue running over, he immediately slapped her and sent her flying. Ruan Qiushue cried out in pain as blood seeped out from the corner of her mouth. Her entire face quickly became red and swollen. Her eyes were filled with anger as she glared at the elder and shouted, "It wasn't me. It's not me. It was that woman. It was that woman who caused my father to be like this." The elder was so angry that his entire body was trembling. He immediately shouted, "Men, lock her up. Lock him up. She will be punished according to the family law." Soon, Ruan Qiushue was taken away. At this time, the surrounding clan elders looked at each other. They looked at the angry elder and asked, "Great elder, what should we do now? The family head has been crippled. We must immediately ask the great elder to come out of seclusion." Chapter 4198. While the Ruan clan was in chaos, the various powers in the city were watching from the sidelines. In the Wang clan, Fengjiu scooped up the 2 second-level spiritual fish and placed them in the spiritual spring in her space. The rest were given to the Wang clan. The Wang clan's old master came to Fengjiu's courtyard. Seeing her lying on the soft couch, he walked in. "Miss Feng." "HM." Fengjiu opened her eyes and sat up. Looking at the Wang clan's old master, she gestured, "Sit." After sitting down, the Wang clan's old master smiled. "I'm here to thank Miss Feng for the spiritual fish. They're all good stuff. It's all thanks to Miss Feng that we were able to obtain these spiritual fish." Fengjiu smiled. "They're all first-level spiritual fish. It's also because the Emerald Cloud Pond is a good place. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to raise such spiritual fish. I'm the one who's causing trouble for the Wang clan." "Ah, Miss Feng, what are you saying?" He smiled and waved his hand. "That trouble isn't trouble. Moreover, the Ruan clan's kid's cultivation was crippled today. The Ruan clan might not stand up for him. Based on my understanding of the Ruan clan's old man, if he comes out of seclusion and finds out what happened, he'll probably come to apologize. From what you're saying, you're very familiar with the Ruan clan's old ancestor." Fengjiu asked in surprise. The Wang clan's old master stroked his beard and laughed. Of course we're familiar. Otherwise, I wouldn't have agreed to Yuer's father becoming in-laws with the Ruan clan. It's just that I didn't expect the Ruan clan to get worse with each generation. Well, in these 10 years, the Ruan clan's status and power are considered outstanding among the 8 great clans. It's no wonder that the youngsters are so complacent. The 2 of them chatted in the courtyard. At the Ruan residence, old Master Ruan, who had been in seclusion for a long time, was invited to come out. After old Master Ruan asked about the ins and outs of the situation, his face sank. "So you're saying that while I was in seclusion, not only did I reject the marriage with the Wang clan, I even caused such a thing? His voice was old, but there was a hint of inner strength in it. He was full of energy, and his complexion was very good. However, at this time, his whole body was emitting an imposing aura that made everyone in the hall not dare to breathe. It's like this. The head of the Wang family came to discuss the marriage of his son, Wang Yu, but Qiushua looked down on Wang Yu and said that he was a playboy. So the marriage was called off. A middle-aged man said with a trembling voice. Under the pressure of his aura, he could only feel cold sweat seeping out of his forehead. So you want to discuss the marriage with the Han family? Old Master Wan said in a low voice. No, this matter hasn't been settled yet. The middle-aged man hurriedly said. Humph. Madame Ruan snorted heavily and said, Bring Ruan Qiushua here. Not long after, the locked-up Ruan Qiushua was brought to the hall. At this time, half of her face was swollen, and one of her hands was hanging down and trembling. She looked very embarrassed. Qiushua greets grandfather. She didn't even dare to breathe loudly and kowtowed in a regular manner. Chapter 4199. Hearing this, Ruan Qiushua, who was kneeling on the ground, suddenly raised her head in disbelief. Grandfather, no. You can't do this. I'm your biological granddaughter. Can't do this. Do you want me to keep a scourge like you who doesn't know the severity of the situation and only knows how to cause trouble for the family? Biological granddaughter? I have so many granddaughters, I don't need one more like you. He snorted coldly and glanced at her with disgust. Do you think that's all? Let me tell you, because of your stupidity, your father's cultivation was destroyed, and he became an ordinary person without cultivation. From today onwards, you will be responsible for taking care of his daily life in the manor. You can't rely on others. Hearing this, Ruan Qiushua collapsed onto the ground, her face full of despair. No, I don't want to go to the manor. I don't want to go to the manor. I'm the third young miss of the Ruan family. I'm the third young miss of the legal wife. I don't want to go to the manor. I don't want to go. As she spoke, she suddenly stood up and ran outside. Lock her up. Send her father to the manor tomorrow as well. Old Master Ruan ordered coldly. Thus, Ruan Qiushua was taken away. From afar, one could still hear her hysterical screams. When everyone in the hall saw this scene, none of them dared to breathe loudly. The patriarch's thunderous methods were not something that had happened in a day or two. It was just that he had not done anything for a long time. So everyone had forgotten about it. Now the patriarch had been crippled. As soon as he came out of seclusion, he did not deal with the person who had crippled the patriarch's cultivation. Instead, he dealt with these messy matters in the family first. It was really frightening to see this. They were afraid that the next one to be dealt with would be them. Have the people we sent out to investigate returned? Old Master Ruan asked in a low voice, looking at the people in the hall. Not yet. As First Elder spoke, he looked at Old Master Ruan, who was sitting at the head of the table, and said, Those people are from outside, but they are currently living in the Wang family. We don't know much about them, so I think the people we sent out to investigate won't be able to find anything useful. Hearing this, Old Master Ruan thought for a while, then ordered, Personally go to the wine cellar and get 2 jugs of good wine. Also, bring the Eastern Sea luminous pearl from the storeroom, and come with me to the Wang family. Okay. The Great Elder responded, and immediately turned to leave. Seeing that the Great Elder had left, everyone in the hall looked at each other and hesitated. Someone mustered up the courage to ask, Ancestor, are you going to apologize to them? Wouldn't that be too? Before he could finish his sentence, he saw the patriarch's cold gaze sweep over him, and he immediately shut his mouth. The atmosphere in the hall froze at this moment. No one dared to speak again. They just stood there with their heads lowered. After a long while, the old master on the main seat snorted heavily. He stood up with his hands behind his back and walked towards the center of the hall. He said, You are all old people, yet you can't even see through such a small matter. I really don't know to what extent this family will fall if I'm not here in the future. With your short-sightedness, who knows when you'll bring a calamity to your family? Hearing this, everyone was shocked. They couldn't help but look at each other and say, How can this be? How could that be? Huh? You guys. All of you better reflect on yourselves. As he spoke, he flicked his sleeves and walked out. Chapter 4200. In the Wang family, after the gatekeeper reported, the housekeeper reported. When the master of the Wang family heard the news, he called Wang Yu to tell his grandfather and Fengjiu, asking them to decide whether to see him or not. Wang Yu came to the plum garden where Fengjiu was. Seeing his grandfather and Fengjiu playing chess in the yard, he went forward and bowed to them. Then he said, "Grandfather, Miss Feng, the old master of the Yuan family is here. He's waiting outside the gate. Do you want to see him?" Hearing this, Fengjiu smiled and looked at the old master of the Wang family. "You guessed right. Ha ha ha. When the old master of the Yuan family finds out, he can't sit still." He laughed and was not surprised. "Let him in," Fengjiu said as she raised her hand and put down a chess piece. Outside the gate, the carriage stopped aside. The old master of the Yuan family and the first elder stood aside and waited. After all, they came to apologize. It was not good to sit in the carriage and wait for people to come out. Only in this way could they show their sincerity. "Old master, first elder, please come in." When the gate opened, Wang Yu smiled and gestured to them. Looking at Wang Yu, the old master of the Yuan family looked at him and said, You are right?" "Yes, I'm Wang Yu." He nodded and answered. "Ha ha ha, speaking of which, I haven't seen you for many years. I didn't expect you to look so good. Your grandfather is so lucky. He has such a grandson," he said with emotion as he followed him inside, feeling pity in his heart. How could no one in the Yuan family like such an excellent child? They were really blind. Wang Yu smiled and did not say anything. He took him to the plum garden. Before he could say anything to his grandfather, the old master of the Yuan family walked up with a smile. "Ha ha ha, old master of the Wang family, see what I brought you?" He took out 2 jars of wine from the space and carried them forward. He came to their table naturally and put the wine aside. Seeing the 2 jars of wine, the Wang clan's ancestors' eyes lit up. He quickly grabbed one of the jars and sniffed it. "Isn't this the precious spirit wine you've stored? You're actually willing to take it out? Ha ha ha. We haven't seen each other for many years. Naturally, I can't come empty-handed to meet an old friend." He smiled, then looked at Fengjiu and said, "This must be Miss Feng. This old man came today to see my old friend, and also to apologize for my unfilial grandson. This is a greeting gift for Miss Feng, please accept it." As he spoke, he gestured for the first elder to step forward and present the gift. "This is the luminous pearl of the Eastern Sea, a treasure of the residence." The great elder took out a large box from the space. After opening the lid, a bead the size of a ball appeared in front of Fengjiu, exuding a charming luster. Because it was daytime, the light emitted by the luminous pearl was not obvious. However, such a large luminous pearl was indeed a treasure. Seeing that she didn't accept it and just looked at it, the old master of the Yuan family said, "I've already ordered that father and daughter be sent to the farm tomorrow. In the future, they are not allowed to take half a step into the residence." Hearing this, Fengjiu glanced at him, then said to Leng Shuang, "Accept it." Chapter 4201. You asked the kitchen to prepare some dishes to go with the wine. Grandfather Wang ordered. "Okay." Wang Yu responded and turned to walk out. "I won't drink with you. You can drink. The manor is in a mess now. I have to go back and watch them tidy up." Grandfather Wang said and cupped his hands. "Gentlemen, I'll go back first. I'll find a chance to have a drink with you later." Seeing this, old Master Wang said, "All right, then I'll see you out." Then he stood up and said goodbye to Fengjiu. Then he walked him out. After they left, only Fengjiu and Leng Shuang were left in the courtyard. Du Fan, who was resting in his room, came out and looked outside. He asked, "Master, will the Yuan family still make a move?" Fengjiu played with the chess piece in his hand and smiled. "Forget it. As long as they don't look for trouble, there's no need to do anything to them. One should be lenient where possible. There was no need to force an entire family into a dead end." Seeing this, Du Fan nodded, bowed, and returned to his room. On the other side, Old Master Wang glanced at Old Master Wang beside him and asked, Old Man Wang, where did you get to know such a person? This girl is not ordinary. How did she come to live in your manor? Also, who is she? Ha ha ha. Grandfather Wang stroked his beard and smiled. You don't need to know who she is. You just need to know that you did the right thing today. As soon as he finished speaking, he continued. Your son and your granddaughter are really too much. Originally, I wanted to be in-laws with you, but there's no hope for that. He smiled. My Ruan family has more than one granddaughter. I think your grandson is really good. How about this? I'll let your grandson choose from all my granddaughters. He'll take whichever one he likes. How about that? Do you think you're picking vegetables? You're picking randomly? Now you think my grandson is good? Unfortunately, there's no more chance. The old master of the Wang clan laughed and said, It's my birthday in 2 days. You should come over to drink and have some fun. All right, then I'll come back in 2 days. I'll bring you a big gift then. As he spoke, he patted his shoulder and said, Thank you for today. Why are you thanking me? I didn't do anything. Old Master Wang smiled. I know. In any case, just thank you. Let's go, you can go back. He waved his hand, walked out of the gate, got into the carriage and left. Watching him leave, Old Master Wang then walked back to his room. There were only 1 or 2 smart people in the Ruan family. If the Ruan family didn't have this old man, they would probably be in trouble. After returning to the plum garden, she finished playing chess with Fengjiu, and the dishes were served. The old master of the Wang clan poured a cup of wine for Fengjiu and said, His wine is really good. Try it. If you like it, I'll give you this jar. Fengjiu chuckled and said, He specially gave it to you. You're still willing to give me a jar? Ha ha ha, it's just a jar of wine. It's not a big deal. The old master of the Wang clan laughed and drank the wine. 2 days later, the various forces in Azure Demon City were secretly puzzled. They thought that there would be some conflict between the Ruan and Wang clans. Who knew that nothing would happen in the end? Instead, they heard that the master of the Ruan clan and Ruan Qiuxue were secretly sent to a village in the countryside. Chapter 4202. The people of the various forces in Azure Demon City were all shrewd people. They would know what was going on in the city at the slightest sign of trouble. Today, regardless of whether they were old friends who had sent invitations or not, they all used Old Master Wang's birthday to pay a visit. They also wanted to find out more about the background of the lady in red. Elder Wang had already guessed what these people were thinking. Hence, although today's birthday was a grand celebration, they had sent out invitations. Those without invitations could not enter, even if they came to the entrance of the Wang residence. My apologies. Our patriarch has ordered that today is the patriarch's birthday banquet. Guests entering the manor must have an invitation card in hand. The steward stood at the entrance and apologetically said to the 2 cultivators holding the birthday gifts. Hearing that, the 2 of them looked at each other and said, If that's the case, please accept these gifts. As they spoke, they handed the gifts over. However, the housekeeper said, We appreciate your kindness. However, the family head has ordered that we cannot accept gifts from those who are not invited. Hence, haha, I heard that the Wang family only sent out 99 invitations. Those who can come are all people who have some relations with us. An old man walked up with a smile and handed over an exquisite invitation. He said, I heard that only 2 people can be brought in. Hence, I brought my 2 grandsons to wish Elder Wang a happy birthday. So it's elderly. Please come in. The housekeeper took the invitation and looked at it. He smiled and invited them in. Seeing this, the surrounding people also knew that they could not enter without an invitation. Hence they all left. Inside the Wang residence, everyone gathered together. Looking at the people sitting in the front yard, they were slightly surprised. Among these people, almost all of the major forces in the city had come. Other than the old master of the Ruan clan and the old ancestor of the Han clan, the other clan heads and old ancestors of the other clans had come. One had to know that generally speaking, when the patriarch was in charge, the patriarchs didn't care much about the clan's affairs. However, when they saw the patriarchs of the various clans sitting together today, They all knew in their hearts why they were here. Usually, they would not see any of these people. However, there were quite a few of them here today. On the surface, they were here to celebrate Elder Wang's birthday. However, in reality, they wanted to investigate the background of the mysterious lady in red. However, after looking around a few times, they still couldn't find the woman in red. At this moment, Fengjiu was leisurely lying on the soft couch, taking a nap. Normally, the banquet would be held outside. However, since the Wang clan wanted to hold a grand banquet, they had been entertaining the guests since early in the morning. At the same time, they also wanted to let these people who usually couldn't get together to have a good chat. Thus, even though the front was bustling with activity, she was quiet and elegant in the plum blossom courtyard. It didn't affect anything happening in front of her at all. "Master, what kind of gift should we give to old Master Wang for his birthday?" Du Fan asked as he poured himself a cup of tea. Fengjiu narrowed his eyes but did not open them. He said leisurely, "What else can I give other than pills? I don't have anything else here, just a lot of pills." Hearing this, Du Fan thought for a moment and asked, "What kind of pills should I give? I still have Master's gift in my space." Chapter 4203. Du Fan was stunned for a moment. He glanced at the pill and said in surprise, "This is a pill for healing internal injuries." "Yes, I'll give you this one. Compared to other pills, this one is really useful." Fengjiu smiled, put it in a medicine bottle, and threw it to him. "Find a gift box and put it in it." "I know." Du Fan responded and put it away first. When the sky gradually darkened, Fengjiu, led by Wang Yu, took Du Fan and the others to the banquet in front. Almost as soon as she appeared, everyone's eyes fell on her, as well as Du Fan and Leng Shuang who followed her. "Ha ha ha, Miss Feng is here. Please take a seat." Old Master Wang smiled and came forward to greet her. Seeing this, everyone's expressions were even more different. "A little gift for your birthday." Fengjiu smiled. As soon as he finished speaking, Du Fan came forward and presented a small gift box. Looking at the small box, the Wang family was a little excited. Such a small box, it was probably filled with medicinal pills. When they thought of the pill that Fengjiu gave them that day, and then looked at the small box today, their eyes fell on the box in unison. It was not the people below who went to take the box, but the Wang family had personally took the small box, and then solemnly thanked Fengjiu. "Thank you, Miss Feng. Miss Feng, please take a seat." Fengjiu nodded slightly, and was led to sit in the front seat, while Du Fan and the others sat behind her. "Miss Feng, we meet again," Old Master Wan called with a smile. When he saw Fengjiu looking at him, he nodded slightly. Fengjiu returned a smile, and took a sip of the wine in front of her. Her behavior was languid, and her whole person exuded a casual and free aura, which made her look more and more different from others. "Some time ago, I heard that the Wang family and the Wan family's marriage proposal failed. I didn't expect to see Old Master Wan here today." Old Master Chen, who was also one of the 8 great families, glanced at Old Master Wan, and then at Old Master Wang, his eyes full of mockery. Hearing this, the surrounding people's eyes flashed slightly. Although some of them wanted to say something and stir up trouble, people like Old Master Chen, who was so straightforward, did not dare to speak. Now that they heard these words, their eyes were filled with excitement and anticipation. In fact, they also wanted to know what happened between the Wan and Wang families. Why would the old ancestor of the Wan clan accept an invitation and come to the Wang clan when the head of the Wan clan was deposed, and the third miss of the Wan clan was sent away? Haha, most of the people in Azure Demon City have some sort of relationship with me. As for the people sitting here today, some of them have some sort of relationship with me, and some of them have some sort of relationship with my Wang clan. Since you're able to attend my birthday banquet, you're all not outsiders." The Wang family's ancestor paused and looked at the Chen family's ancestor. "The Wan family's old man and I have been friends for decades. It's normal for our children not to like each other. We can't force them. After all, we can't arrange a marriage just because we like them, right? Besides, if we can't be in-laws, can we be enemies?" Chapter 4204. Old friend. With this toast, I wish you happiness as boundless as the East Sea and longevity as long as the South Mountain. With that, he downed the wine in one gulp. Good. Grandfather Wang responded with a smile, and also downed his cup. Then the servant poured another cup. This time, he gestured to the people around him and said, "This toast is to all of you. Thank you for coming to my birthday banquet today. Tonight, let's drink and eat to our heart's content. We won't go home until we're drunk." Everyone stood up and raised their wine glasses. After saying some good words, they emptied the wine in their glasses. As everyone sat down, the atmosphere gradually became lively. The sounds of discussion and conversation could be heard everywhere. "Ha ha ha, miss, may I know your name?" A drunk man came to Fengjiu and asked. Fengjiu glanced at him indifferently, and then said to Grandfather Wang, "I'll take my leave first." She did not like this kind of noisy atmosphere. Instead of sitting here, she would rather go back to the courtyard to lie down and watch the stars, drink wine, or cultivate. When the man came to Fengjiu, Grandfather Wang's heart skipped a beat. Seeing that Fengjiu was not angry, he hurriedly asked Wang Yu to take the man to the side to drink. He hurriedly went forward and said, Okay. Miss Feng, please go back and have a good rest." "Okay." Fengjiu responded and then turned to walk out. Du Fan and the others naturally followed behind her. Late at night, the Wang family sent all the guests away. Today's banquet ended perfectly without any major accidents, which made them all breathe a sigh of relief. At this moment, the father and son of the Wang family and Grandfather Wang finally had the chance to sit together and take out the gift Fengjiu gave them. Grandfather Wang looked at the two of them and said, "Last time, it was this kind of box. It contained elixirs. Do you think it will also contain elixirs this time? If it was an elixir, it would be a precious elixir of high grade. But how did Miss Feng have so many elixirs to give away? Open it and take a look," the old master said as he walked to the side and sat down. Seeing this, the Wang family had opened the box. When he saw the bottle inside, he could not help but say, "It's really another medicinal pill." As he spoke, he poured out the medicinal pill and said, "Could it be another advancement medicinal pill? No, this is an elixir to repair the internal elixir." Wang Yu looked at the elixir rolling out of the bottle, and her eyes lit up. "That's impossible, right? That kind of thing is indescribably precious." As the head of the Wang family spoke, he saw his father, who was originally sitting down and preparing to drink tea, suddenly stand up with his hands trembling. His eyes were fixed on the pill. This pill. He reached out his trembling hand. Even when he saw the advancement pill last time, he was not as excited as he was now. "Father, what's wrong?" Wang family head asked worriedly. "This is a 7th-ranked Niden. It can cure my internal injury from 10 years ago," Grandfather Wang said excitedly. Hearing this, Grandfather Wang could not help but exclaim in a low voice. As soon as his voice came out, he quickly went forward and closed the door of the hall. Then he stepped forward and said, "Father, if this is the case, then our Wang family is really stable this time." Chapter 4205. While he was excited, he couldn't help but wonder who this Miss Feng was. He couldn't help but ask again, "Father, who is Miss Feng?" The grandfather and grandson looked at each other, then told him Fengjiu's identity in a low voice. At noon the next day, at the transmission formation in the back mountain of the Wang family, Grandfather Wang and the others came here with Fengjiu and the others. He glanced at the formation and said to Fengjiu, "Ghost Doctor, you all stand in the formation. After I activate it, you will be sent directly to the Cyan Demon Forest. You must be very careful inside." "Okay, we know," Fengjiu responded, and went into the formation with Du Fan and the others. "Take care," Grandfather Wang said, sighing in his heart. He didn't expect that the Wang family would have such an opportunity to meet Ghost Dr. Fengjiu. Wang Yu, who was standing on the side, pursed his lips and didn't say anything. Seeing that the formation was about to be activated, he stepped forward and said, "Miss Feng, let me go with you. I also want to go there to gain experience. Besides, I'm at least more familiar with everything in the Cyan Demon Forest than you all." Hearing this, Fengjiu raised his eyebrows. You want to go with me? You know, that place may be a place of no return. Besides, if you go, I won't protect you, and I can't guarantee that you can walk out of there alive. Grandfather Wang hurriedly stopped him and said, Don't be impulsive. That place is not somewhere you can go with your current strength. He only had one son, so he naturally didn't want him to die like this. Back then, his father and the others had barely returned from the Azure Demon Forest. After returning, they had suffered extremely severe internal injuries. If it weren't for the spiritual medicine that the ghost Dr. Fengjiu had given them, they would probably be like this for the rest of their lives. Now that he heard that his son was going to go to the Cyan Demon Forest, he naturally objected. On the other hand, old Master Wang was startled when he heard this. He seemed to be seriously considering his decision. I know it's dangerous, but I still hope to gain experience. Don't worry, I can protect myself. Wang Yu said, worried that she wouldn't agree. Hearing this, Fengjiu smiled indifferently. Since you've decided to go, then go. Don't regret your decision today. Wang Yu smiled and said, I won't regret it. It was rare for him to have this opportunity to become stronger with them, so he naturally didn't want to miss it. Seeing this, the old man of the Wang family told Wang Yu some words, and took out some things from his space, and gave them to Wang Yu. He looked at them, and then started the formation. The group of people disappeared along with the light emitted by the array. When they looked again, they had already disappeared into the array. Cyan Demon Forest, Yi Feifei exclaimed. She felt that her whole body was sucked out by a force. She lost her balance, and fell back a few steps until she sat upright. As she fell, Du Fan and Leng Shuang also appeared. However, the two of them were strong and steady, so they landed firmly on the ground. Wang Yu staggered when he landed, but he stood firm. Fengjiu appeared in front of them with a flash of red light. Chapter 4206. Fengjiu looked around and said, According to the old man of the Wang family, we should go this way. She pointed to the front left. We are still in the periphery, so it is not dangerous. Wang Yu said, looking at the lush trees around. There was no road around, and the weeds were as high as half a person. Because there was a lot of rain in the forest, the ground under their feet was very wet. He took a look and found that his boots had been stained with a lot of mud. When he lifted his feet, he could feel the extra weight on his feet. Fengjiu looked at him, smiled and asked, Have you been here before? I have only been to the periphery with my clansmen. I have never been inside. Wang Yu said. Then let's go. Let's go in this direction. She knew it was extremely difficult to find the ancient nine-tailed fox in such a large forest, but she had no choice but to rely on her luck. If she was lucky, she might find it soon. If she was unlucky, she might not find it even if she stayed here for a few years. Du Fan walked in front to explore the way, followed by several people. The weeds that were as high as half a person also stepped on a path as they walked. Except for Fengjiu, Du Fan and Leng Shuang, who had high cultivation, Wang Yu and Yi Feifei's boots stepped into the mud every time they walked. It was not easy for them to walk. On the contrary, if one looked closely at their feet, they would see that Fengjiu and the other two were walking very lightly, as if they were stepping on cotton. There was only some dirt on the soles of their feet, and there was no dirt on the sides of their boots. The forest was very big, and the trees were everywhere. They walked for a long time, but they did not meet anyone. However, as they walked through the forest, they would sometimes startle some poisonous snakes. Before they could get close, those poisonous snakes would slither away with hissing sounds. On their first night in the forest, they found a place to rest. After a simple night, Fengjiu said to Du Fan the next morning, In addition to looking for the nine-tailed fox, this trip is also to let Feifei gain some experience. I'm not worried about your strength. Even if we're in this forest, I don't have to worry about you. Therefore, let's split into two groups. You take Feifei, and I'll take Leng Shuang and Wang Yu. Whoever finds the nine-tailed fox first will inform me through his communication jade. Du Fan glanced at Yi Feifei and nodded. All right, I'll take her with me. Master, please be careful. Fengjiu smiled. Don't worry, it's not her first time in this kind of forest. You'll have to take care of her. She doesn't have much experience in surviving in the forest. Fengjiu glanced at Yi Feifei and said to Du Fan, "You have to let her learn something. But don't let her be on the verge of death. You have to control the amount." "I know," Du Fan responded. "Then we'll go first." "Master, don't worry. I'll learn from Brother Du," Yi Feifei said. After bowing to Du Fan and Leng Shuang, he went into the forest. Seeing them leave, Fengjiu smiled and said to the two people beside him, "Let's go." Wang Yu watched them leave and couldn't help but ask, "Isn't the map with Child Du? We don't have the map here. When we go inside, won't we?" Chapter 4207. As they continued to walk inside, Fengjiu sped up, which made it difficult for Wang Yu, who was following behind. Because Leng Shuang could keep up, he was about 3 meters behind, and this was the distance he followed closely with spiritual power. As soon as he relaxed a little, the distance widened again. The two people in front walked very easily. After walking for a whole morning, the distance of about 3 meters became 5 or 6 meters. Leng Shuang glanced back and saw that Wang Yu was walking with difficulty. The corners of her clothes were stained with mud, and her boots were almost muddy. Her forehead was sweating and she was panting. Seeing this, she asked, "Master, do you want to stop and rest for a while? I think he can't stand it anymore." Even if he had good cultivation, he was only a little stronger than people of the same age. How could he keep up with them, who had received strong training and had such strength? It was good that he could keep following them all morning. Fengjiu smiled and said, "Then let's rest under the big tree in front and have some food." As she said this, her figure flashed and she went under the big tree in front of them. They rested for a while under the big tree, and then Wang Yu came and sat down beside them panting. Seeing this, Fengjiu asked with a smile, "How is it? Is it okay?" "It's okay." He raised his sleeve to wipe the sweat and gasped, "It's just that I almost can't keep up with you. It's normal that you can't keep up with us." Fengjiu took out a glass of wine and took a sip, saying, "It's still a long way to go. We'll have to climb over the mountain in front of us, which will be more difficult." Hearing this, Wang Yu couldn't help but ask, "Don't we fly on the sword? Or fly on the sword? Won't it save more time?" Fengjiu smiled and said, "It's okay, but it's not necessarily safer in the sky than down here. What's more, don't you want to experience it? How can you suffer some more?" She raised her head and glanced at the lush trees. The trees covered the sky, and when she looked up, she saw a stretch of greenery. The trees here were all towering trees. Because of the cover of these trees, some flying beasts would not be able to discover them in the forest. However, because of this, walking in the forest was naturally not as fast as flying. "That's true." He nodded and glanced at the trees above his head. Only then did he take out some water from his spatial ring to drink. He also took out some rations and handed them to Fengjiu and the others. "Eat something. We have some here," Leng Shuang said as he took out some pastries and handed them to Fengjiu. Fengjiu smiled and said to Wang Yu, "Would you like some pastries?" Wang Yu glanced at the exquisite pastries and shook her head. "No, I'll eat these." Pastries were not as good as coarse grains. The three of them rested under the tree, eating and chatting. However, at this moment, a cry for help came from not far away. When she heard the voice, Wang Yu instinctively stood up and looked toward the direction of the sound. "Someone is calling for help. I'll go take a look." As he spoke, he quickly walked in that direction. Fengjiu and Leng Shuang looked at each other, shook their heads, and followed him unhurriedly. How could someone call for help in the deep mountains and forests? It was too much of a coincidence. When Wang Yu followed the voice, she saw a naked woman sitting in the weeds, sobbing with her hands covering her face, crying and begging, "Young master, help, help me." Chapter 4208. The woman picked up the robe and put it on her body. However, at this moment, it seemed that the wound on her body was pulled. She cried out in pain, "Ah! Miss, what's wrong with you?" Wang Yu instinctively turned back and saw the woman lying on the ground, unable to move. Young master, help me." "Aye." She turned back with tears on her beautiful face. Wang Yu hesitated for a moment, then walked forward and covered her body with the robe. He asked, "Miss, are you hurt? Why are you here alone? Did you get separated from your family? Or did something happen?" "My foot is hurt." She rubbed her jade-like ankle with one hand. "Let me take a look," Wang Yu said, looking down at her foot. He lifted it up with one hand and pressed it with the other. "Does it hurt here?" With his head down, he did not notice that the woman's raised hand was about to fall. At this moment, Fengjiu and Leng Shuang came out. She was so scared that she immediately withdrew her hand. She lowered her head and sobbed, secretly looking at them from time to time. "The bone is fine. Maybe it's just a sprain. It shouldn't be serious. There is no swelling," Wang Yu said and withdrew his hand. Seeing the woman looking behind him from time to time, he looked back and saw Fengjiu and others coming. He said, "I saw this girl here when I came. There was no one else." "Yes," Fengjiu responded with a smile. He glanced at the woman faintly and did not speak. Leng Shuang glanced at the woman. Her eyes moved slightly. Seeing that her master did not say anything, she did not speak either. "Young master, who are they?" the woman asked in a low voice. "Who are you? Why are you alone in this deep forest?" Fengjiu glanced at her and looked around her body. He said ambiguously, "You haven't put on your clothes." Aye. The woman lowered her head and did not speak. "Now that you have rested, let's go," Fengjiu said. He did not look at the woman again, but looked at Wang Yu. As soon as his voice fell, he walked away. Seeing this, Wang Yu could not help but hesitate. "But this lady, you'd better worry about yourself." Fengjiu's voice drifted over. He didn't even turn around. "Miss, hurry and go find your family," Wang Yu said with a bit of embarrassment on her face. "I can't take you with me. I'm really sorry. If you follow this direction, you can get out of the Cyan Demon Forest." "Young master." Seeing that he was about to leave, the woman hurriedly rushed forward and hugged his leg. With this movement, the robe on her body slid down, revealing her snow-white skin and a piece of spring scenery. Wang Yu blushed and quickly closed her eyes. "Miss, please respect yourself." "Young master, I'm not heavy," the woman said as she stood up. Seeing that Wang Yu's eyes were closed, she stretched out one hand, and her fingers changed into sharp claws. She fiercely dug at Wang Yu's chest. "You're courting death." A cold voice sounded out, and a sword chi shot towards the woman. The woman was startled. She hadn't thought that the woman who had left with the two of them would turn back. When the danger approached, she instinctively cried out in alarm and dodged. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.